Some people have said, including Nikki Haley, I think it's absolutely insane. Nikki Haley said, oh, well, we can take 1 million people from Gaza. Really? And she's a Republican. I've never heard anything so insane in my life. This from a security point of view. But why would Nikki Haley volunteer to take 1 million Gazans if the King of Jordan and the President of Egypt won't take one? Here, take a look at the King of Jordan, making it crystal clear he and no other Arab countries want any of that. Take a listen.
To part of the question on the issues of refugees coming to Jordan, and I think I can quite strongly speak on behalf not only of Jordan as a nation, but of our friends in Egypt. That is a red line. Because I think that is the plan by certain of the usual suspects to try and create de facto issues on the ground. No refugees in Jordan, no refugees in Egypt.
And let me give you a little bit of history. The PLO, the People's Palestinian Liberation Army, the essential Palestinian terrorist group from the 70s and 80s, they were in Jordan. And they basically had a bit of an uprising, and Jordan kicked them out. They went to Lebanon and almost destroyed that country. Israel went in to kick them out. Then they went to Tunis. They don't want, and by the way, about 60% of the population of Jordan, ethnically speaking, is Palestinian. Could you imagine if you brought Hamas operatives, Hamas supporters to Jordan? They would topple the king. And you heard the king, he speaks flawless English. Jordan is one of the more moderate Arab regimes. It's had peace with Israel, not a particularly warm peace, but it's had peace with Israel for decades. And it has a fairly close working relationship with Israel in terms of security. You think they're going to take 50,000, 100,000, 250,000 Palestinian refugees from Gaza, many of whom are trained to support Gaza ideologically and in terms of violence? He's not crazy. But those are things in the Middle East, and we live here in Canada and in North America, and there's plenty of things for us to be worried about here. Some people say, Ezra, what are you doing talking? What are you talking about those foreign entanglements for? And I believe that North America, one of the best things about it is it's far away from entanglements, isn't it? As Senator Dandurand said about Canada 100 years ago, we're a fireproof house far away from inflammable material. And he was right. It's not right anymore. We have brought into our heartland thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people who support violence as a way of solving a political or religious grievance. And we had our reporters out across the country over the last few days, and we saw some astonishing things. Let me just ask you a question. If I said to you, how would you get your hands on a swastika flag, a Nazi flag? You would probably scratch your head a bit and say, well, if I'm not in the theater business where you'd have a prop maybe, there'd be no store you could buy one from. Maybe you'd order it online. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sure you could find a place to order it online, and I bet you 99% of those are FBI front groups wanting to know who's buying swastika flags. But that's sort of how I think one would get it. But how do you get a Taliban flag? I'm pretty sure Amazon's not selling that. How do you get a Islamic State flag? How do you get like the actual real bona fide terrorist flag, the real deal flag of banned terrorist groups, and some of them fairly obscure? And how do you have it, and you can see what I'm talking about right here, in Mississauga, and that's a big old, is that a Yukon XL or something, or a Suburban? It's a big old $100,000 Suburban. I'm guessing that thing drives for Uber. I may have been in that vehicle. Big old, what do they call that? King cab. He's got a Taliban flag. Yeah, put that back on the screen, please. Look, where would you get a Taliban flag? How do you get it? And you just have that kicking around your living room or in your in your closet, and you're just ready to bring it on out. I'm not talking about the one that's in the car there that they're rolling out. but the big one he's flying. Well, I guess either one of them. Where do you get those? There are people in Canada who have Taliban flags at home. And we saw another one. What was the other one we saw? Islamic Jihad. Yeah, thank you. Now this one here, like maybe that Taliban one could have been homemade or something, but this one here is like who has the Islamic Jihad, the black flag of Islamic Jihad? That's not homemade. Where do you get that from? And he's not hiding his face. Put it back, yeah, play it one more time. He's not hiding his face. He's not an agent provocateur. That's him. He's proud of it. Where do you get that? Just got that kicking around? How many people in Canada have those, like my point about how do you get a swastika flag? It's not easy. I don't think it would be easy. There's a lot of people who have terrorist flags of actually banned terrorist groups, going to marches for those groups. Now, it is not a crime. By the way, it is not a crime to own a swastika flag. It's not even a crime in Canada to be a Nazi. It's not a crime. It is not a crime in itself to have a Taliban flag or to have an Islamic Jihad flag. It is a crime, however, since both Islamic Jihad and the Taliban are banned terrorist organizations, it is a crime in the criminal code, punishable by up to 10 years in prison, to support those groups. And there's the 4 words: participate, instruct, harbor, and I forget what the 4th one is, assist or something. So it is, or travel or something, I can't remember. But there's 4 things that you cannot do with an illegal terrorist group. And I'm guessing if you've got a Taliban flag at home, you're probably affiliated with them, participating, facilitating, instructing, and harboring. Throw that on the screen just for 1 second. Here's the criminal code. You can search for yourself. Just Google criminal code terrorist provisions. Every person who knowingly participates in or contributes to, directly, indirectly, so participating, facilitating, instructing, and harboring, those are the 4 things you cannot do. Now, if you've got a terrorist flag at home and you go to a pro-terrorist march, are you participating? Are you participating? Are you facilitating? You may be. You may be. No charges in Canada, of course. That would be too embarrassing. Speaking of which, Arif Virani, who, if I'm not mistaken, I got to keep track, there's so many cabinet shuffles. I think he's the justice minister now, right? So he was speaking at a anti-Semitism conference in Ottawa. And I should say it was a conference against anti-Semitism, because given how many rallies there are for anti-Semitism these days, you got to be careful. So Arif Virani, who's a Liberal cabinet minister, was speaking at this anti-Semitism conference, and he didn't announce any criminal charges against Hamas supporters for spreading hatred. He didn't announce any criminal charges against Hamas supporters for participating, harboring, instructing, or facilitating terrorism. Didn't announce any criminal charges against the Taliban flag guy, against the Islamic Jihad flag guy. Didn't do that. But he did take the opportunity. In fact, there's a CBC story. If you want to just show that CBC story, let me read this. At conference confronting anti-Semitism, Justice Minister promises online harms legislation. Bill was first introduced prior to last election, promised again within 100 days of vote. Here, I'll just read a little bit. At a conference on confronting anti-Semitism on Monday, Justice Minister Arif Virani repeated a standing promise of the federal Liberal government to combat online harms with new legislation, but offered no timeline. Quote, "We need a safe and secure digital environment as much as we need safe streets in our communities," Virani said before an audience gathered by the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs in Ottawa. Okay, so the Justice Minister doesn't have a word to say against the Hamas rallies because they're part of his election base. They're part of his voter base. Doesn't have a word to say about what's actually going on in the streets. In Toronto, a Jewish school, there were 3 young men who threatened the kids and then threw a rock through a window. Arif Virani, the Liberal Justice Minister, doesn't have a word to say about that. 3 suspected Hamas supporters arrested after alleged threats to Toronto Jewish School. Police deployed inside classroom. So Arif Virani, he's not got really anything to say about this, but he's going to use the pretext to go after online comments.
Hey folks, that was a clip from the daily live stream I co-host it Monday to Thursday from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Alberta team takes over on Friday. Please tune in. And by the way, we want to hear your 2 cents worth. If you're able to make a minimal $5 donation, we will read your chat on the air live. Thank you.
Do you want to start feeling like your pre-COVID self again? You're not alone. The wellness company's Spike Support Formula is an all-natural supplement to help people do just that. It was created by cardiologist Peter McCullough and his expert team of doctors to help the people experiencing effects from COVID and the you-know-what.
Go to twc.health/rebel today.